I hope you're having a good day. I'm trying my best. I'm showing up. I'm doing what I have to do. Got a lot of different things I want to talk about, but today's discussion is going to kind of piggyback off of that conversation we were having in regards to, the transition of stand culture and that sort of thing. And this video, what are we going to call this? We're going to call this Absence Makes the Heart Grow Fonder. Stands, celebs, mental health, all of the things. And the thing I want to focus on in this regard is not just the schizo fans that we've coined a bit earlier, but talking about the conversation around schizophrenia that's come up. So uh, when Cardi came out with "Am I the Drama," there's all of this conversation about Nicki Minaj and her mental health and that sort of thing. So I previously did a video talking about Nicki's life and what she's been through. And I have reason to believe that, she has some significant trauma. And, in evaluating or just paying attention to how she's shown up, this schizoaffective disorder is essentially when you have psychosis with your mood disorders. And the mood disorders are things like bipolar, borderline, that sort of thing, where you just have a maladaptive thinking. You have a tendency to look at things through a particular or a specific sort of negative framework. It is a bit deeper than that. You tend to struggle with episodes of depression and anxiety and so on. It's definitely more than that, but just as a quick synopsis so that I don't bore you with my psych stuff, right? So, an important part of what I'm doing now, what I'm learning in school these days, is the capacity to observe symptoms, observe behaviors, and call out the judgment decision of diagnosis. So the thing that they use is called the DSM, and the DSM 5 is the latest version of it, right? And they reevaluate these things because why? Uh, the brain is adaptive, it's evolutionary in its own right. It's going to change, and things like conditioning models, um, people having their own life experiences, and things like that, things change. And I wanted to have this conversation, not just for the sake of, it's entertaining and what have you, but from the perspective that Gucci Man has come out and his wife has come out and he's written a book about episodes, right? Specifically dealing with schizophrenia. And I don't think that it's an accident or we should not take advantage of the opportunity to talk about schizophrenia within our community and what it looks like. So, one thing I want to say that I see people talking about a lot is the fact that Keisha is Gucci Man's handler, right? Like, so it's a lot of narrative around the fact that she is, just using him or taking advantage of him and he's being exploited. I find it very interesting that after he got out of jail and he hasn't been doing drugs, he's healthy, he's, standing tall, he's not broke or anything like that. No online episodes or nothing like that's going on. But he's the one that is being exploited. Nicki gets on the internet and she's dropping hella conspiracy theories, threatening people's kids in full blown arguments, and nobody thinks that that's strange. And as a matter of fact, you have folks making comments that her husband is protecting her from outside forces, and people say things like she can't be controlled, right? She said that she can't be controlled. So I want to touch on a few of the symptoms, right? So I actually have my book open. I don't want to be too formal about this, but we talked beforehand about things like delusions, hallucinations, thought disruptions, and disorganized speech, right? So, or just disorganized behavior. And I also want to preface this with schizophrenia is one of the more difficult mental health conditions on the basis that this is where you have this, again, the overproduction or deregulation of things like dopamine. And I want you to take the time to think of it like schizophrenia is equivalent to, it's going to sound a little rough, but hear me out. It's equivalent to being on mushrooms without actually taking mushrooms. And I don't think people understand the significance of folks having thoughts, ideas. Like when they talk about delusions and hallucinations in particular is auditory and visual. So you can literally watch videos about this schizophrenic experience online. But people like narratives and they chase behind a concept or an idea. And mental health has been so stigmatized that people just don't get the help that they need. And I really want to take the opportunity to take us away from that over stigmatization and bring us to a place of a mental health condition is not different than a person that has asthma. Sometimes you are going to be born with something slightly different. Sometimes you're going to be exposed to environments that's going to create different sorts of needs. And I want us to get out of the habit of, again, just creating these narratives that people are being controlled and you drugging them up and all this other stuff. We're still comfortable with people drinking cough syrup, but we're beefing about people taking antidepressants. I don't really get it. I think that we need to get away from that. So Gucci Man actually had a moment similar to what we see happening with Nicki these days, right? Back in 2013, where he accused all of these people of, being sexually explicit with people and all these other things. He had a bunch of conversations, threatened people, and so on and so forth. Another thing that he talked about was, the grandiosity. And again, with me looking at my book here, grandiosity is actually one of the symptoms, right? Or giving things away or showing off, right? Like posturing in a way that says, I am of a certain sort of integrity and I'm special. And schizophrenia, again, there's no case of schizophrenia that I've read or I've seen that the person that is diagnosed or schizophrenic is not somebody that's smart, talented, or anything like that. Every single case that I read about schizophrenia, it's usually a kid is in college and then they have a sudden break. It's an artist that is exploding and having a great life and suddenly there's a shift. And people don't understand, again, because your cognitive capacity and your psyche are two different spaces and two different functions in the brain. And intelligence is a series of facets, I want to say, right? So there's creative intelligence, there's visual spatial, there's communicative, there's written and spoken. There is, a bunch of different versions of intelligence. It's not just that you can read, write, or anything like that. And just because you have a psychological misstep does not mean that you are cognitively incapacitated. There is a difference. And too many of us have gotten adjusted or gotten comfortable again with the something must be wrong, as someone is exploiting them, as something is somebody's taking advantage. Going back to the notion that Gucci Man is being handled, schizophrenia is not something easy. Again, when we talk about things like hallucinations and whatnot, people with schizophrenia, and Gucci Man actually mentioned this, he struggles with hearing things when he is not taking his antipsychotic medication. Because again, when you are struggling with dopamine regulation, that shows up in a number of ways. And again, with the psychosis, a part of it is very much related to, you might be hearing things, you might be seeing things. Again, think about it like LSD, mushrooms, and the symptoms of those. And they don't need the mushrooms, they don't need the LSD, they don't need anything. Their brain just does that on its own. And this is the part that a lot of people miss. An important part of the delusion point is that folks that are schizophrenic or struggling with psychosis, religious delusion is not abnormal. So when people's like, oh, Nick is talking about God and people don't like that and so on and so forth, I don't want to hear that. We are literally in a time where it's a priority to be a Christian, right? So it's not about you talking about God or anything like that. We're not going to take you away from that space, and people aren't being persecuted for the Christianity in America. It's not what's going on. What's happening is that she's referring to herself and her son as a prophet. And not only is she referring to herself as a prophet, she's also pedestaling herself in that process and saying that people are attacking her while not having the capacity to tell us what exactly is it that she's going through, what exactly is it that's going on. I'll tell you a quick story about my experience with schizophrenia. So I've shared with y'all that I have a family member struggles with schizophrenia. Long story short, the first time we seen the significance of their episode, um, bro had a tendency. So what typically happens is that they'll stop sleeping because something happens in the brain where they start to go to sleep and sleep paralysis is set in. And again, remember, dopamine is dysregulated. So dopamine is a part of what helps you move your body. It works with your brain stem so that you could walk and move your arms and your limbs and whatnot. So usually when you go to sleep, it entirely shuts off so that you don't have or struggle with dopamine desensitization. My bad. Um, so when you sleep, you go unconscious because the rest of your body is like your brain is going through this rinse and repeat, and your body is completely on chill so that you remain hormone sensitive. For some reason, whatever's happening with the person struggling with schizophrenia, and now I'm speaking specifically about this family member, they have some alertness, but somehow they're experiencing paralysis or sleep paralysis. This is normal. When you're going to sleep, sleep paralysis is a part of the process. But for whatever reason, there is some dysregulation that's happening. And again, this dopamine is off. So they're still somewhat conscious, still awake, and that's what I don't really get it, but it's a thing that happens. In that process, they start to roam the streets. But what happens? When they don't sleep, their brain doesn't do this wash and repeat thing that you need so that you don't go further crazy, because a part of not sleeping is that you will start to hallucinate. You start to develop psychosis. You could look this up, or maybe I'll see if I can insert a clip somewhere that if you don't sleep for an extended period of time, you will literally start to lose your mind because your brain needs time to reset and your hormones have to regulate so that you are experiencing reality in accordance to what everybody else is, what we consider or deem normal. Bro is going through it, right? So he trying to walk around or whatever the case might be. We trying to talk to him like, yo, talk to me, tell me what's going on. And he's explaining like, yo, when I'm laying down, my body just feels stuck. And I feel like something is happening, something is going on. I understand that bro was practically a genius. Like, so it was wild to see because as he entered his teenage years and you have this onset where suddenly like he's talking to himself and he's going through all of this stuff, and it got real different really, really quick. Long story stupid, bro is conversing with us, right? Me and my brothers. He talking. It's cool, like no beef, right? Cops is there because he was being disruptive. So he whatever he's going through is a full blown episode. It's a real thing. All right, talking to him, trying to get him to stay cool. He don't like that we talking to him, and then like in an instance, you could see him go from like being cool to like looking at you funny. I'm looking, I'm like, yo, what's up with him? Like, what's going on, bro? All right. So I kid you not, bro, get up, full rage, like in an instant, like not regular, just like, yeah, I don't feel like talking and showing frustration. Now I'm talking about getting up and hard body is like, fuck out of here, get the fuck out of my face, starts full blown cursing, death threats and all that. I'll kill you, bitch. I'll fuck you up. The works. Like, this is what it turned into because at some point in the midst of us having this conversation, it went from I'm cool and I could talk to you to nah, you're trying to hurt me and I'm fully in defense mode and you're gonna be feeling my wrath. Long story complicated, like it came down to like bro having to go to the hospital and everything else. It required admission because he had to be intravenously given antipsychotics. But at this point, the the illness had taken course and had progressed so much that he was just in bad shape. And I think that the toughest part about it is that you knew who he was before. When you see the episodes and the severity of the episodes, you don't believe that it's that person. You're in denial about it. And then when they are medicated, right? Like when they get their antipsychotics and their hormones are regulated again, they go back to their lucidity and you're like, are they playing with me? No, they're not playing with you. They're just not healthy. This is schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is not a joke. So when I hear people making this comment about like, oh, Uchi's wife is exploiting him or whatever, that's grossly irresponsible and it's stupid as hell. Listen to me when I tell you, like, schizophrenia is not a joke. And if you could see a man walk around, look healthy, and because you don't recognize him and the last time you saw him was when he was high and drinking syrup, that's great. I'm glad you don't recognize him because he's not the same person no more. If you can have the conversation that you believe that Keisha is handling Gucci, but you can't acknowledge that Kenny is exploiting Nick, I'm gonna need you to just go and just read about schizophrenia so that you understand, and even down to mood disorders. When you see her pop up on the internet and she's posting and reposting Trump and all that other stuff, and she's like, oh, I'm so flattered and this is such a great thing, and so on and so forth, you gotta understand that she's just not in optimal mental health. It's just not going to happen. It's getting worse. And I said this in my last video, and I'm gonna say it again. I genuinely feel like in another year or so, because at this rate, this is me speculating. I really do not think that monetarily she's in a good space because she don't have a handler, as y'all have put it. I don't think that she is as fruitful because if she is struggling with something like bipolar disorder, specifically schizoaffective means that you have a mood disorder in combination with psychosis. If she's struggling with bipolar disorder, that means that she's entirely unmotivated and doesn't do much of anything until she is sparked into a manic episode. And an important trigger for a manic episode can be things like jealousy. So when she pops back out and she says she's dropping an album and she's putting out music and things like that because she's spiting the other women, that is somewhat consistent with how bipolar disorder would present itself in regular day to day. Again, I'm in school for this kind of stuff, and this is what we are learning how to do. I'm not by any means suggesting that I'm right, that I'm correct, that I know what I'm talking about. I'm saying that if I took this or took her symptoms and presented it and had a conversation with my professor, I think that we would come to an agreement that it's something like a schizoaffective, and we would go and figure out more things to confirm that. When she disappears for all this time and then she pops back out, and then you see a bunch of different tweets that are suggestive and accusatory and that sort of thing, all of it is very, very consistent with psychosis and mania. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm being sincere when I say that. And then we get back into this conversation about these stands. The stands that are left, the people that are still attached to her, there is no part of me that does not believe that they aren't struggling with some version, some variant of a little touch of psychosis, right? Like, I mean this with respect. At this point, I'm calling them the schizo bobs because they are trying to rationalize or make correct these behaviors. Going back to that story of that family member that was struggling with schizophrenia. Love without accountability is enablement. And the inability to correct folks and their behavior only makes it worse. So that family member has a parent, and that parent was like, my baby is fine. Ain't nothing wrong with them. Ain't nothing wrong with them. Ain't nothing wrong with them. When he's in the hospital, the parent is going to the hospital and talking to the people in the visiting area, talking to the other people that have been admitted for their mental illness, and is like, ain't nothing wrong with you. These people, they out to get you. They don't know what they doing. They don't know what they talking about. They think they could lock you up. They think they could keep you away from your true greatness, all of the other things. This person struggles with mental health concerns too, but that's besides the point. They enabled this behavior. And the schizophrenia has deteriorated over time. And here's what's really tough about schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is one of the few mental health conditions that disrupts the psyche, and if left untreated over time, deteriorates cognitive capacity as well. So then it starts to get into, because symptoms like disorganized speech and what have you, once you do that for too long, your conditioning or the shift in your brain takes that downturn as well. So now you have this person who doesn't speak clearly, who does not have coherent and logical conversations. And if I'm being honest again, like if you listen to Nicki's Queen Radio back in 2018, 2019, and her station has from 2020. So this is editing Sarah popping in because I recorded this video a couple days ago and I didn't finish it because I got stuck at the part where I say, oh, I'm going to look up some videos of Nicki Minaj and how her language and her behavior has deteriorated. And I mess around and I started looking and I'm like, nah, this bitch been nuts for a minute. Wow, that was aggressive. I didn't mean it like that, but I did. Like, so I'm gonna pull that part because I can't very well in good faith make that argument. And I'm like, oh nah, she been wailing for a long time. Like this, yo, I'm watching one of the lives, right? And like she's sitting there like balled up and like whispering and talking like this. And they just in the live acting like this is normal. And I'm like, oh man. And don't think for a minute that I missed all of the stuff that's popped off with her lawyer dropping her and so on. Man, I'll be back. But I just had to insert this because it's crazy. All right, I'm out. People like to lean into this idea like, oh no, she's just animated, she's this, she's that. And that's fine until it's not, right? The animated persona is cool to the extent that there aren't other symptoms that are present that make the animated behavior concerning. Busta Rhymes was also animated. He ain't still walking around talking about hoo-ah, right? Like, sorry. He's not still doing that. And there is some concern that she is now in her 40s and she has not made that transition. And I'm going to say it again. I've watched the Barbs, the delusional ones, speak to, oh, she's so this, she's gorgeous, she's this, she's that. I will never discount that being true. But we are not going to sit here and pretend that we are not seeing the decline of her presentation. We're not going to pretend that her hair ain't giving what it used to give. We're not going to pretend that her outfits aren't giving what they used to give. But this is what happens when you love somebody without accountability. They are leaving her to her detriment. Again, I am 1000%. She is in an echo chamber of other people that might not be mentally sound, genuinely. And this is the thing about social media, because social media gives way for them to pack up into these spaces from all across the world and continue to fuel narratives that just are not helpful and don't support them getting better. So, on purpose, as a person that is learning about mental health conditions through and through, please stop talking about Keisha exploit. She is taking care of that man. We need more people like her to take care of people with these sorts of mental health conditions. If you think you know something, go and look up people with cerebral palsy and all of these different things so that you can see what is required to take care of people that are struggling or have an issue with their neurocognitive capacity or neurodivergent of any sort. Just go and look this up before you continue to spew this rhetoric that suggests that somebody is being exploited. The truth of the matter is that Gucci is by definition a person of the vulnerable population. Nicki Minaj is too. And to further along this dialogue, to speak to why we need to destigmatize these kinds of conversations. You know Selena Gomez? She is diagnosed with bipolar disorder. You know Mariah Carey? Diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Lady Gaga was diagnosed with depression. Adele, postpartum depression. And you can literally Google this stuff and see how many people actually have been diagnosed with mental health conditions and have undergone treatment and have been vocal about their mental health. And they are not in the same predicament as Nicki Minaj. They're not online cursing people out. They're not having all of these wild conversations. They're not getting liens put on their homes because they aren't dealing with lawsuits. There is so much more to unpack here. And I think that it's more important for people to support the rhetoric that encourages her to get help than to be suggestive that somehow Gucci is being exploited when he actually is in a better predicament than most people of our community tend to be in with mental health conditions. It's too many kids that's going undiagnosed of autism. There's too many people that's not getting the appropriate kind of trauma therapy that they need to deal with the stress and the neglect. There's so many different things that we go through, and it's recurring stress that we undergo. There is PTSD all through our community. And hear me when I tell you that things like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia only make sense when you have this much hardship that comes through our lifestyle. It's just what it is. The reason that I want to encourage that is because, you know what? I'm not trying to be funny. Cardi was making like a lot of jokes or whatever the case might be. But I'm like, yo, Nick's son really might not be as verbal as he should be. And he's a
Let's
big
do,
boy.
bitch. La, la. People who have eyes to see and really see know what you did to him and why you did it that day. Hi, Didi. Didi.
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with him, but I'm saying if you keep the stigma alive that something is wrong with him, he's not going to be in a position to get the help that he needs. Not different from her. So, in the spirit of sometimes people have mental illness and it is okay. It is not that deep. Sometimes people have asthma. I got a bad hip right now. My hip got a whole attitude. I'm working on my stretches. I'm going to get my life together. But it comes with it. This is a part of life. Some people struggle with depression, some people struggle with other stress disorders, anxiety, all of the above. Leave people to get the help that they need. And I'm gonna be honest, as a final point, for real, I feel like I feel like she's kind of muddying female rap right now. Not trying to be mean, but I'm just being honest. I think she need to take a minute to just get her mental health under control, because if she get her mental health under control and she come back, all she need is an actual 1 to 2 years of taking it seriously and she will be fine. But at this rate of people gassing her up and stands jumping in these comments and on social media telling her that she's so fantastic, and they keep hitting her with more dopamine surges and she don't need it, she's going to be unrecognizable if the diagnosis is actually correct and true. And I think that she's deteriorating a little bit, and I think that people need to support her getting the help that she needs. But I won't sit here and pretend like people with mental health conditions aren't difficult. People with depression, autism, schizophrenia, they're not easy to deal with. It's just a fact. They are not easy to deal with. They have poor tempers. They tend to be self-centered. They all of the things that you don't want to deal with in people. A lot of times they have some of the more difficult attributes that you tend to avoid in folks, and you do it. That's when unconditional love kicks in. You're just looking out for them. But that's my TED talk. I think that she needs help. Gucci is under some real love and protection. That's what I see. But you know what? Y'all tell me what y'all think. We'll probably come back. As a matter of fact, I'll share with y'all what I learned about a stress disorder and how I think I might have I might have been struggling with PTSD a little bit, but and I would never advise that you self-diagnose. But we're gonna come back and have that conversation because I want us to get into this mental health thing a little bit more, and I want folks to take care of themselves. But in the meantime, I love y'all. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you next time.